Okay. Alright, I'm gonna do the map guide for Stockpile. It's not gonna be the best, and I'd recommend using the timestamps I will give. They're in the description, but I'm just gonna get into this. First, I'm gonna be a T approaching B. Overall, for T side, you usually want to hit both sites and have like a lurk mid maybe. Well, of course, everyone does that, but generally, you just want to adapt because both sites are viable. It's not just one site that's very sided. But being a T going B for now, the first thing you'll see is Snake, and then the second is main. So as you're coming up to main, they can nade you. They can just toss nade, and it will land on you from sight. I'm going into like a little depth here, so I do recommend using the timestamps. But for example, if I naded, it lands, directly in main. So as you see, but let's say they don't nade, you don't have to worry about nades. Then you can check up here. If you run like at a decent pace, if you're not slowing down, then you can see if they cross to this side of the site. So you only have to worry about this entire side of the site if you don't see them cross. The most common spot is usually site. They will sprint peek the box, so you have to either try to pick them off on the sprint peek or just flash them and then push. But the problem with that is they're still plastic and they're still con. Unless your snake players pick off con early, then you can't really rush the site guy. So I'd recommend having one guy on your team try holding the guy on site, then smoking off con. Of course, with a way better smoke than that, but that just gives you free passage to just walk over here and like deal with everything like this. You understand? Still have to worry about plastic, but this just gives you super easy entrance to site, and you can pick off anyone here. As we go to the snake side, the snake player's job, he's really just like, he's more of an aggro player. You should put like one of your more aggro players on here, or whoever volunteers. But occasionally you're gonna have someone that pushes up, so you want to flash that. It's not always that they push up, but if they do, then you just gotta play it safe. If you don't flash it, it's fine too, but you just gotta really make sure you're just being aware of this. As we go over here, the most common spot that people place on snake is con, and they'll just sprint peek it, and you gotta make sure you don't die from that, because they're gonna sprint peek, they're gonna flash, and then they're gonna swing. One way you can kind of avoid this is you can, of course, smoke this out if there's a lot of you snake, because I don't really recommend wasting a smoke on that unless you're doing a late push or if you're delayed in here. But once you get like a smoke in there, preferably like over there kind of, so it doesn't smoke off this, you can just throw a flash inside of snake and then you can push it, and most of the time they will be unflashed by the time you get up to like around here. So you have to make sure like they don't peek you as when you're there, so just watch it on that part. But post plant for the entire site. Let's say the snake guys came in here, killed the snake guy. The site guys killed the site guy too. Also, only throw the con smoke if you know your snake guys are not gonna like take space, because sometimes the snake players, once they kill this guy, they run out to yard and look for early contact. Sometimes though, if you have a lot of smokes, that's what you should have. Smoking plastic is your #1 priority for post plant. It's just like, that's the most common spot that people go to, and it's good. I don't know why I'm opening this. Yeah, it's bad. See, that basically blocks the whole thing off. They can get to here, but it's not, people don't always do that. Playing in main is really important for post plant on B. It's just like, only if you planted for main though, because you can just sit here. Maybe it's best if you have someone watching flank for you, so you can focus on like better things. But if you don't, it's fine. Overall, B is a pretty simple site. You just gotta take site. Post plant is smoking off plastic and con if you guys are all on site. But con's kind of like, of course you should smoke con, but make sure your teammates aren't being cut off. Let's head to the mid. I'm just gonna do mid, yeah. Alright, now coming from a B side mid approach, people do like pushing this, so you gotta watch out. Of course, it's not always, but I'm giving every possibility that could happen on a map. People could push, it's not always, but it does happen. As you run up here, you can push mid yourself. You just have to make sure you're not getting killed by like mid window. You have to make sure you flash mid window. So for example, of course you would flash like somewhere around here and then flash that. And then you would run over here, and maybe get a pick. You kind of have to worry about sight if like your A guys are not pushing, because you only want to push mid if you're doing an A. If you're not doing an A, then you're gonna die. Simple as that. That's really B side mid for you. Let's go to the A side mid. Honestly, there's not much to go over for A side mid. All you do here is you can have like a good peek on this guy right here, and you know you might be able to get the pick on him, but just watch out. Your main quote-unquote job is to fight window or that. So if you want to fight mid, you should go this side, but if you're like trying to make a nice cool play, you should run up here or maybe look for a pick on Acon. So alright, coming from A side, I'm gonna do main first and then go to long. They can like cross map this. It doesn't happen always, but it's a possibility you do get cross maps, so just watch out. How you should run up on it is you should hug this wall. You can either go through here or through here, but most people decide to just go here if you have like a really fast start. Maybe here, but it's more risky. The reason you want to do that is because people can early push this, and then they can swing it and maybe get a kill. Of course, that's not all the time, but it's definitely a possibility. One way you can counter it, if you're paranoid about it, is you just throw a nade, and it should just land on their head. Well, of course, better than that, but, you know, we don't talk about the nades, okay? But the point is, you can throw a nade from there, and it will kill them, especially if you get it like more centered towards there. It will definitely get a pick, maybe kill them, but it's a good nade if you're paranoid about pushing. Now, you know the entrance to A. Let's get like up here how to take site. The first point of contact will be this little box. Not a lot of people play that, so I wouldn't recommend checking it, because you can just literally just swing past it pretty easy. Unless the guy is him, then you're not gonna die. The first real point of contact will be this little thing above here, above the forklift. It's pretty dangerous because they have a little head peek. It's not fully a head peek, but it can be used as a head peek. Just gotta be cautious of that. Okay, now people, they might spot you, and then they will drop down the forklift and sprint peek that. How to take this site? First, of course, the most important thing you have to do is you smoke mid doors. Of course, the util is not on point for me today, but smoking mid doors basically like the rotates are basically cut off aside from long, and hopefully your long players will deal with the long guy, so you won't have to worry about it. But smoke on mid doors is definitely something you need to do when taking A. So now you're just here, you know. I wouldn't recommend fighting this guy with like no util or anything, because you know he definitely has an advantage. Also, if you don't have any smokes, you can use this as a head peek. It's not the best, but it gets the job done, especially if you're on a safe. Okay, now how to actually take site. Mid doors is smoked, right? So you cut that off. You maybe flash long, flash that. You only need one flash for this, but you know you can use two if you want. Saying they're playing fork, you can get up here like being a little pushed up. It's kind of riskier, but it still gets the job done, especially if you smoke mid doors. You flash over, and then you don't get blinded like I did, but you can kill this guy right here, and he will barely expect it. He could counter flash and like throw all types of util at you. That's how we really take A. The spots they could be playing in is Ninja, especially if they pushed main and then they ran off. Ninjas, they definitely play there if they push main and then back off, but still possibility in normal play. Sandwich, if you're coming on site, what I like to do, I flash over, I kind of look towards here, and then I immediately go over here. It's not like the most reliable technique because they can swing while you're looking over here and you're dead. But if you think you hear someone here, it's best to just risk checking it and then going there. But usually they'll only have one player on site. But if it's a situation where you need to retake, then you should definitely do this. Although most people playing sandwich like to play it over here. So in that case, you're kind of just cooked. But this is for entering A against one guy. For my long people, look, I am going to do that. Oh, I don't know why I did that. That just takes longer. But for long, you don't need any util except like flashes, maybe a nade if you're feeling like it. You can swing this, but most people like just running up here to break room and then going over here and then swinging this angle right here. The reason for this is it's just like a closer, easier fight, especially if they're sprint peeking. The main cause is because you want to get closer if they're sprint peeking. It just makes an easier kill. You can of course flash this and then you can push up. Flash and then get up here, work your way up. Long is just like a battle of endurance because it's just sprint peeking forever. Long guy might swing sometimes, and he can also push toward here. When he pushes toward here, I see a lot of people get picked off, but it's pretty obvious. Like he will swing from here, and he might get a pick if you're standing there not knowing where he is. But you gotta expect all things on long because there's only two spots he can be: sprint peeking this, and then right here pushed up. But you'll know if he's pushed up because he has to throw flash to get here. Also, one more thing on long. People do push it sometimes. Like, it's barely, though. It's kind of, like, risky because you can see them drop from break room if you're, like, fast enough. And, like, they'll have the info. So, the long players, if the long players don't call it out and, like, as soon as they can, then you will die from main. So, just got to watch out there. Now, moving on to the CT side. Low-key, more of a... Definitely a CT-sided map, I'd say, if you play it right. I'm going to go to the B side again, and I'm going to teach you how to play it starting from Snake to Main. Overall, this map is good. It's the most played map so far in matchmaking. At least one of the most played maps, and maybe it's not the most played, but it's definitely a played map. Okay, there's, of course, the one way I said that you can play Snake. The most popular way is you sprint peek on. And, when they come up, like I said earlier, they might counter flash, so you just gotta watch out. Because if they sprint peek, they're gonna flash you. So you gotta make sure that you're not getting full blinded while pushing, because then, it's wraps. People do push this really fast. Like, as soon as you see them, while you're throwing your flash, they might already be up here and kill you. So you just gotta be very, very wary of that. Another way you can play Snake is you can play on this fork right here. I do this if I'm like struggling bad because no one really looks over here unless they're clearing it like slowly. You can just do this like little jiggle peek here. Maybe go over here if you're feeling like that. You can also play it from back here if you're playing more of a passive approach, but I don't recommend that. If you're alone on B site, you're like your teammate DC'd or you're just alone for some reason, you can play right here. Well, this is more of an aggro approach. There's another way that I will show you, but you can watch both Snake and Main for this. I recommend like just sprint peeking it, but you gotta be cautious if you sprint peek because they can come from both angles. They can shoot you from both angles since there's no cover. That's really Snake for you. Moving on to Main, the first point you come in is plastic. The most common is probably sight. Maybe plastic, but it depends on the people you're going against. Most of the time, they're going to be sight or pushed up on silver barrel, or maybe green barrel, but most of the time just sight. How to defend the sight really well is first, of course, you want to nade it, because like I said earlier, that nade just lands right on them. That's good. So that's the first step you want to do if you have like a very good like hunch that are going B. I once got like a 3K off that nade like 2 days ago, so it's definitely a good nade if you know they're going to be. But really, you just gotta sprint peek sight. If you see one, then you flash deep if you can. I usually just flash like a little up, like, and then it'll just flash the whole team, allowing for rotates to come in a little delay. If you can, if you have like a lot of util and you know you might die here, I just like throwing a smoke like that, because it kind of just cuts off like a line. They can still push through it, of course, since they're T's. They're trying to get more space, but it definitely does help. Now if you're playing plastic, this is more of a passive approach to holding B site. It's still very good though, but it most people, they just like, they don't even sprint peek this, they just put their gun up and swing. That's good unless you're going against good players, because if good players see you do this, they're just gonna head tap you and you know you'll die. So you should sprint peek on plastic. If you're alone on B, you can also play this spot. It's more of a way passive approach to playing it solo, but of course it still works if you're a passive player. This is great. You just sprint peek like this, and you can check if they're going con, if they ran out snake and main. The bad part is they can hug this wall and get up like really far, and they can even kill you on the sprint peek since you're kind of sprint peeking wide to check con. One more thing, reminder, they can see if you push up here and get on silver or any of these barrels over here. So say you do push silver, it's like very risky. I wouldn't do this unless you're like, you want to take space or get info. The first thing you should do, since you're on the way, is of course throw your nade. That'll delay them, and that'll actually, you should always do that if you're pushing to silver barrels, because I'll do it again real quick, but throwing the nade, it just gives you kind of a passage here, because they will be running away while you're running up, so you can just, you know, shoot people that are running away from the nade. If you're here, the best loadout is going to be a nade and 2 flashes, just because it's such an aggro angle. You know, you just flash over it, and you swing. You can have a flash, you can have a smoke, but if you're going here, I would recommend just buying 2 flashes. Moving on, that's B site for you. Retake. To retake, well, retakes are kind of hard for B, but you just want to have one going every possible way you can. 1 flank, 1 con, 1 plastic. Of course, stack if you have more people than 3, but you can also just like full stack yard, because you know being alone isn't the best possibility. But okay, moving on. You're going mid. I used to play mid, so I can actually do a pretty good analysis here. You push up here. You sprint peek window, unless you're doing a different play, but this is the most common play. Sprint peeking window, and you just sprint peek until you see somebody. The mid guys don't fight it really unless the guy's pushing. Say they push mid. You drop down here usually, and you try to pick them off. It's kind of risky, but if they do push, you gotta do what you gotta do. How I personally like to play this is I like to, I sprint peek. When I see somebody, I drop down here though, and I peek from down here. It just, you gotta switch up your movement, and it'll catch them off guard. The final way on how to play mid is pushing up a little bit. I wouldn't recommend pushing up past this point unless you're trying to like push mid. Of course, if you're pushing mid, you have to have a smoke for that, and you must throw it like way earlier so that gets smoked off. Then you can just swing this, and you can catch them while they're running here and here. It's not a bad strat, but it's definitely, again, a risky one. So pushing at mid, like passively pushing, which is kind of silly to say, but you're right here, you see everything. You see everything that's like pushing kind of, because they like, it's an off angle kind of. It's just an off angle basically. I wouldn't recommend pushing, but you should just play like the spot I do, and you sprint peek if you see someone drop down here. It's the best way I'd say to play mid. Moving on to A site. Come from over here. Best spot to play, I'd say, is right here, because you get an early spot without like picking yourself off. You can early spot someone, maybe get a few shots off, which tags them, or you can get a kill if you're just in. And then, of course, it's kind of predictable, but usually most of the time you want to go down here, sprint peek again, and this is where you're going to be for most of the round. Sprint peek. If you see someone pushing, you just flash over. Like if they're being aggro, I kind of like to push my luck here and I swing off a sprint peek. I like keep sprint peeking forever. I'm more of an aggro player, so personally I do swing sometimes, and it does work because I just time it perfectly, I guess. Sometimes it doesn't, but we don't talk about those times. If they're full pushing sight, what you want to do is you want to, assuming you have a nade, because, you know, I don't know why you would throw a nade, like, from here or something. Well, yeah, it's kind of probable, but let's say you have full util. Maybe you have one flash, not two. The first thing, you spot them, they're, like, pushing hard. I'd just throw a nade over this forklift right across. That will help. You can also just drop a nade on you if you know you're going to die, but I don't recommend it. Honestly, I like throwing my flash first and then my nade, just because it kind of blinds them. They're gonna be not focused on that, but it's like, okay, let me restart. They're gonna be focused on the flash and not the nade you're gonna be throwing after, so they won't realize there's a nade. And then your best choice is just to try and live here. They will be flashing you a lot. Like a lot. I'm telling you, like, you can't see and you're dead. That's how a site goes. Of course, you can play it differently to your own liking. For example, what I said earlier about pushing and backing off here. I already went over that, so I don't want to go back into depth. But let's go to long now. Long, of course, as I went over on the T side, is just a bunch of sprint peeking. It's literally all sprint peeking. There's some fighting. Like, if they're pushing up, you can easily just, like, flash once and then, you know, you can swing off the flash, but I wouldn't fully recommend it. Well, actually, I would recommend it if they're pushing. I don't know what I'm saying, because then backing off you can do, since it's like very short rotate, but it's still not the best idea. You understand what I'm saying? It's just a bunch of sprint peeking. You really don't have to fight here, because most of the time they drop dropper, or they pick you. You just gotta be. Long is the spot where you play passive. I'm just gonna note that there. That's really the whole map. I'm gonna go over some like T defaults, cause you know it's pretty important. If I can go there. Common pushes is usually like one long and 4 main, maybe 2 long, but it's usually just 1 long. For B, you want to have 2 snake, 3 main. Yeah, that's usually good. And for mid, for playing for picks, honestly, you want to put more towards. No, for playing for picks, you just want to do a 2-1-2. 1 long, 1 main, 1 mid, 1 snake, 1 B main. That's really all for the map. I know I didn't go super into depth and like all like fancy, but I did like the comp style, you know, type of stuff. It's not super flashy, but it gets the job done. You can comment what map you want me to do next. I will be doing like the most played maps and then going down to the least played. So no, I'm not gonna be doing like Manor just yet, because it's like it has like 4 plays in the past month. But apart from that, I will be doing many maps. So just let me know. The end.